In the morning Borak flew to the nest in the far valley and went down into the pit in which were the unlucky ones that the bird had caught. One by one he carried them from that place and to their homes. As for the egg, putting his shoulder against it, he tumbled it from the ledge where the nest was, and it fell and was smashed to pieces. So there was an end of the evil bird, which soon died, and it was the last of its kind, and today of all the birds of the air there are none to do harm to man. The bad wishers. For days and days and for weeks and weeks Kanasa and I rode to the south, and the only break in our days was when we changed our tired horses for fresh ones. That we did sometimes 4 times in the day. We had plenty of choice, for we were driving some 300 mares and colts. Kanasa was a gaucho, a plainsman, as we would say, and a most excellent horseman, so he made nothing at all of catching an unbroken colt with his lasso, and saddling and riding it, doing his share of the driving with the horse new to saddle. With so much of it I grew tired, and one night as we sat about our little campfire heating water for our mate, the tea we made from herbs, I said that I wished the job was at an end. Kanasa strummed his guitar a while, then laid it aside and said, "Wishes are no good, and he who wishes risks. For why? Whenever you wish, you leave out something that should not be left out, and so things go wrong." I told him that a small wish might be all right, but this he would not allow. Things had to go just so, he said, and no one in the world was wise enough to wish things as they should be wished. Then, in the way of the men of the Pampas, he told me a tale to prove the truth of what he said, and this was the tale. Num 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 num. Once there was a woman in Paraguay who had no children, and she wished day and night for a boy and a girl. She did more than wish, going to a place in the woods where were wild, sweet limes and oranges and lemons, and where the pools were covered with great leaves of water lilies, and in the quiet of that place she made a song about the children she wished for. In that song she sang of the boy as handsome and swift of foot and strong of arm, and she sang of the girl as a light creature with keen eyes and silken hair. Day after day she did this, and at last her wish came true, for she had a boy and a girl, and the boy was straight-limbed and well-made, and the girl as lovely as a flower of the air. So far, so good. But that was not the end. The woman had wished that the boy might be strong and brave and swift, and all these he was. But she had not thought of other things, and, sad to say, he lacked sight. For him there was neither day nor night, neither sun nor moon, neither green of the pampas nor blue of the sky. As for the girl, it is true that she had sight so keen that she could see the eye of a hummingbird at 100 paces, but her legs were withered and useless, and she could not walk, for the mother in wishing had said nothing of her health and strength. To crawl about, helping herself with her hands, was as much as she could do. Seeing what had come to pass, the mother was very sad, for her dream had become a very pesadilla, a nightmare. So she grieved, and each day grew paler, and at last one evening caught her children in her arms and kissed them, and they saw her no more, the neighbors next morning telling them that she had died. Now one day when the children were well grown, there came to the house in which they lived a man in a torn poncho who said that he had walked hundreds of miles from the land of the noseless people where it is always cold. He was tired and hungry and torn with thorn bushes, and his feet were cut with stones. So the boy and girl took him into the house and gave him water to wash himself with, and chipa bread made of mandioca flour and sweet raspadura in banana leaves. When he was well rested and refreshed, in return for their great kindness he told them of a strange old witch-woman who lived far away, one who knew many secrets by means of which she could do wonderful things. In a turn of the hand, said he, she could make the girl strong of limb, and with another turn could restore sight to the lad. Then he went on to tell of other witches that he knew, saying that there were many who were not all bad, but like men, were a mixture. True, they sometimes kept children, but that was not to be laid to their meanness, but rather to their love of beauty. "For," he said, "it is no more wrong to keep a child to look at than it is to pluck a flower or to cage a bird. Or, to put it another way, it is as wrong to cage a bird as it is to steal a child." The meal being done, the three of them sang a little, and the sun being set, the old man bade them good night and stretched out under a tree to sleep, and the next morning before the children awoke he had gone. All that day brother and sister talked much of what the old man had told them, and the girl's face flushed red and her eyes were bright as she looked at her brother and thought of how sweet it would be if he could see the mists of the morning and the cool cleanness of the night. Meanwhile, he in his dark world wondered how he could find his way to the witch and persuade her to work her magic so that his sister might be able to go up and down and to skip and dance on limbs that were alive. So at last they fell to talking, and the end of it all was that they started on a journey to the witch, the brother carrying the sister on his shoulder while she guided him safely through thorn thicket, past swamps where alligators lay hidden, and through valleys where bushy palmetto grew shoulder high. Each night they found some cool place where was a spring of crystal or a pool of dark sweet water, and at last they came to the little hills where the witch lived. They found that all was as the old man had said, for the witch was a lonely creature who saw few, because few passed that way. She was glad enough to see her visitors, and led them to a fragrant, leafy place, and seeing that the girl was drooping like a wind-wearied bird, did what things she could. To the boy she told tales of the birds and the golden light of the sun and the green of spreading branches, thinking that with her tales they would be comforted and content to stay with her in her soft green valley. But the more she did for their comfort, and the more she told them of the wonders of the world, the greater was their desire to be whole, the girl with her limbs unbound, the boy with his eyes unsealed. Before long the lad told the witch of the old man's visit, and of their hopes that had led them to take the great journey, and then the old woman's heart fell as she saw her dream of companionship vanish. She knew that as soon as they were whole again they would leave her as the birds that she fed and tended in nesting time left her when winter came. Then she told them no more pleasant tales, but tales of things dead and cold, of gray skies and desert places, of tangled forests where evil things lived. "It is better not to see at all," she said, "than to see foul things and heart-searing things." But the boy spoke up and said, "There being such things, the more I would have my eyesight, so that I might clear those tangled forests of the evil beasts of which you speak." Hearing that, the witch sighed, though her heart was glad at the boy's words. So she turned to the girl, telling her of the harm that sometimes came to those who walked, of the creatures that do violence and scratch and maul, of stocks and stones that hurt and cut tender feet, of venomous things that hide under rocks. But the girl heard patiently, then clasped her hands and said, "And that is all the more reason that I ask what I ask, for with feet light and active I can skip away from the hurtful things, if indeed my brother does not kill them." "Well," said the witch, "perhaps when you know the beauty of the place in which I live, you will be content to stay with me. I must do what you ask, because you are what you are by reason of a wish that went wrong. Now, to get the magic leaves with which to cure you, I must take a journey of a day and a night, and it is part of the magic that those who would be cured must do a task. So tomorrow while I am away you must work, and if I find the task finished you shall be cured. But if you should not finish the task, then all will remain as it is. But I will be eyes for the boy, telling him of the fine things of the world, and for the girl I will be as limbs, running for her, working for her. But I shall do and not wish. Truth is that I would gladly see both of you whole again. But then you would go away, and I sorely lack companionship." After a little the witch said to the girl, "Tell me, little one, if this place were yours, what would you do to make it better to live in?" "I would," answered the girl. "Have all the thorn bushes taken away that are now in the little forest behind the house, so that brother could walk about without being scratched and torn." "That is fair enough," said the witch. "And you, boy, what would your wish be?" "I would have all the little stones that are in the valley taken away, so that sister could play on the soft grass without being hurt." "Well," said the witch, "it is in the magic that you set your own tasks, so the boy must have every stone cleared away before I return, and the girl must see to it that there are no more thorn bushes. Hard are the things that you have wished." After the witch had gone, there was no joy in the hearts of the children, for it seemed impossible that a blind boy should gather the stones, and no more possible for a lame girl to clear the forest. There was a little time in which they tried, but they had to give up, so they stood wondering and for a moment thought of starting for their own home. Suddenly, strange to tell, who should come over the hill but the old man in the torn poncho, and they were both very glad to see him. After he had rested a while, they told him their troubles and spoke of their grief because, in spite of all their efforts, it seemed as though all must come to naught. "I wish," began the boy, but the old man stopped him with lifted finger. "Wishing never does," he said. "But help does much, and many can help one." He put his fingers to his mouth and gave a peculiar whistle, and at once the sky was darkened with birds, and each bird dropped to the ground, picked up a stone, and flew away with it, so that the valley was cleared in a moment. He gave another whistle, and from everywhere came rabbits which ran into the woods, skipping and leaping, and at once set to work to gnaw the stems of the bushes. And as soon as the bushes fell, foxes came and dragged them away, so that in an hour the forest was clear, and when the witch came back, behold, the set task was done. So the witch took the leaves that she had brought and made a brew of them, giving the liquid to brother and sister to drink. "But," said she, "see to it that you speak no word, for if you do before sunset, then back you go to your old state." Both promised that heartily and drank. But as soon as the boy saw the green of the grass, and the blue and crimson and purple flowers, and the hummingbirds like living diamonds in the shade, he called out in his great joy, "Oh, sister, see how beautiful!" And at once he was in utter darkness again. At the same moment, feeling her limbs strong, the girl was filled with such delight that she tossed her arms into the air and danced. Then from her came a keen cry of pain as she heard her brother's cry and knew that he was blind again. There was a moment when she wanted to lose all that she had gained, so that she could tell her brother that she shared his grief, but she remembered that being strong she could help him in his pain, so she went to him and took him by the hand and kissed his cheek. At sunset the boy, who had been sitting quiet, spoke, turning his sightless face to the witch. "You have tried to be good to us," he said, "and you have been as kind as it lay in your power to be. Since sister is well, I am content, and I have seen the beauty of the world, though it was in a flash. So, Mother Witch, since you have not been able to give us all we ask, we will give you all that we have. Come, then, to the place where we live and see the things that we love, the birds and the flowers and the trees, and we will try in kindness to repay you for what you have done." Hearing that, the witch suddenly burst into singing and hand-clapping and told them that the spell was broken because she had been befriended. "No witch am I," she said, "but your own mother who did not die, but was changed to this form for vain wishes." Then the boy regained his sight, and the mother became as she had been, tall and straight and beautiful and kind, and the three of them went to their old home and lived there for many years, very happy and contented. The hungry old witch. She was a witch, she was very old, and she was always hungry, and she lived long ago near a forest where now is Uruguay, and just in the corner where Brazil and Argentina touch. They were the days when mighty beasts moved in the marshes, and when strange creatures with wings like bats flew in the air. There were also great worms then, so strong that they bored through mountains and rocks as an ordinary worm makes its way through clay. The size and the strength of the old witch may be guessed when you know that she once caught one of the giant worms and killed it for the sake of the stone in its head. And there is this about the stone. It is green in color and shaped like an arrowhead, a little blunted and precious for those who know the secret, because he who has one may fly through the air between sunrise and sunset, but never in the night. The old witch had another secret thing. It was a powder, and the knowledge of how to make it was hers alone and is now lost. All that is known of it is that it was made from the dried bodies of tree frogs mixed with goat's milk. With it she could, by sprinkling a little of it where wanted, make things grow wonderfully. She could also turn plants to animals with it, or change vines into serpents, thorn bushes into foxes, little leaves into ants. Living creatures she also changed, turning cats into jaguars, lizards into alligators, and bats into horrible flying things. This old witch had lived for hundreds of years, so long indeed that the memory of men did not know a time when she was not, and fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers all had the same tale to tell of how she had always devoured cattle and pigs and goats, making no account at all of carrying off in one night all the animals of a village. To be sure, some had tried to fight her by shooting arrows, but it was of no use, for by her magic the shafts were bent into a shape like a letter V as soon as they touched her. So in time it came about that men would put outside the village in a corral one half of what they had raised in a year, letting the old witch take it, hoping that thus she would leave them in peace. At last there grew up a lad, a sober fellow of courage, who said little and thought much, and he refused to take animals to the corral when the time came for the old witch to visit that place. When the people asked him his reason for refusing, he said that he had had a dream in which he saw himself as a bird in a cage, but when he had been there a little while, a sweet climbing vine had grown up about the cage, and on this vine was a white flower which twisted its way in between the bars. Then, as he looked at it, the flower changed to a smiling maiden who held a golden key in her hand. This key she had given to him, and with it he had opened the door of the cage. So, he went on to say, both he and the maiden had gone away. What the end of the dream was he did not know, for at that point he had wakened with the sound of singing and music in his ears, from which he judged that all turned out well, though he had not seen the end of it. Because of this dream and what it might betoken, he said that he would not put anything in the corral for the old witch, but instead would venture forth and seek her out, to the end that the land might be free from her witcheries and evil work. Nor could any persuade him to the contrary. It is not right, he said, that we should give away for nothing that which we have grown and tended and learned to love, nor is it right that we should feed and fatten the evil thing that destroys us. So the wise men of that place named the lad by a word which means stout heart, and because he was loved by all, many trembled and turned pale when the morning came on, which he took his lance and alone went off into the forest, ready for whatever might befall. For 3 days Stoutheart walked, and at last came to a place all grassy and flowery, where he sat down by the side of a lake under a tree. He was tired, for he had walked far that day, and found that slumber began to overtake him. That was well enough, for he was used to sleep under the bare heavens, but with his slumber came confused dreams of harmful things which he seemed to see coming out of the ground. So he climbed into the tree, where he found a resting place among the branches, and was soon asleep. While he slept, there came to the side of the lake the old witch, who cast her basket net into the water and began to fish, and as she fished she sang in a croaking and harsh voice this: "Things in the air, things in the water, nothing is fair, so come to the slaughter." They were not the words, but that is what the words meant. But unpleasant as was the song, yet it worked a kind of charm, and things came to her, so that her basket net was filled again and again. The fish she cast into a kind of wicker cage, of which she had several. Soon the croaking song chased sleep from the eyes of Stout Heart, and looking down he saw the wrinkled crone and the great pile of fish that she had cast on the bank, and his heart was grieved for two things, one that there was such waste of good life, the other that he had left his spear hidden in the grass. He grieved too a little, because he knew that on account of his long walk he was weak from hunger and thirst. So there seemed little that could be done, and he sat very still, trusting that until he was better prepared for action the old witch would not see him. But all his stillness was of no avail. Looking at the shadow of the tree as it lay upon the surface of the water, she saw the lad's shadow. Then she looked up and saw him. Had she had her magic green stone with her, things would have been far different, and this tale all the shorter. But not having it and being quite unable to climb trees, she said, "You are faint and hungry. Come down, good lad, for I have much here that is good to eat." Hearing that, Stout Heart laughed, knowing that she was not to be trusted, and he told her that he was very well indeed where he was. So she tried another trick, spreading on the grass fruits and berries, and saying in a wheedling voice, "Come, son, eat with me. I do not like to eat alone. Here are fresh fruits, and here is honey. Come down, that I may talk with you and treat you as a son, for I am very lonesome." But Stout Heart still laughed at her, although, to be sure, he was a lad of great appetite, and his hungriness increased in him. "Have you any other trap to set for me?" he asked. Hearing that, the witch fell into a black and terrible rage, dancing about and gnashing her teeth, frothing at the mouth and hooking her long nails at him like a cat, and the sight of her was very horrible. But the lad kept his heart up and was well content with his place in the tree, the more as he saw her great strength. For in her rage she plucked a great rock the size of a man's body from the earth where it was sunk deep, and cast it at the tree with such force that the tree shook from root to tip. For a moment the old witch stood with knit brows, then she went on her hands and knees and fell to gathering up blades of grass until she had a little heap. All the time she was cursing and groaning, grumbling and snarling like a cat. When she had gathered enough grass, she stood up and began to sprinkle a grayish powder over the grass heap, and as she did this she talked mumblingly, saying, creep and crawl, up the tree trunk, on the branch. Creep and crawl, over leaf and over twig. Seek and find the living thing, pinch him, bite him, torture him. Creep and crawl, make him drop like rotting fruit." So she went on, moving about in a little circle and sprinkling the powder over the grass. Presently the pile of grass began to move as if it hid some living thing, and soon the grass blades became smaller, rounded themselves, and turned brown. Then from them shot out fine hair-like points which became legs, and so each separate leaf turned to an ant. To the tree they scurried, and up the trunk they swarmed, a little army marching over every leaf and twig until the green became brown, and louder the old witch screamed, waving her arms the while, creep and crawl, up the tree trunk, on the branch. Creep and crawl, The nearer to Stout Heart that they came, the louder she shrieked, leaping about and waving her long taloned hands as she ordered, "Seek and find the living thing." Then Stout Heart knew that trouble was brewing. Indeed, for against so many enemies there was no fighting. For a time he avoided them, but for a time only, and that by going higher and higher in the tree, crawling along the branch that hung over the lake, but nearer and nearer the ants came, and louder she bade them to. Pinch him, bite him, torture him. At last there was nothing for it but to drop out of the tree, for he had been hanging to the end of a branch, and the ants were already swarming over his hands, and some running down his arms. So he let go his hold and went into the lake with a splash, down out of the sunshine and into the cool green blue of the waters. He swam a little, trying to get out of the way before coming up, but had to put his head out soon to get a breath. Then suddenly he seemed to be in the middle of something that was moving about strangely, and it was with a sudden leaping of the heart that he found himself in the old witch's basket net being drawn ashore. To be sure, he struggled and tried to escape, but it was of no use. What with her magic and her strength, he was no more in her hands than is a little fish in the hands of a man. He was all mixed up with other lake things, with fish and with scum, with water beetles and sticky weed, with mud and with wriggling creatures, and presently he found himself toppled head foremost into a basket, all dazed and weak. It was dark there, but by the bumping he knew that he was being carried somewhere. Soon he was tumbled into an evil-smelling place, and must have fallen into a trance, or slept. Again, he may not have known what passed because of the old witch's enchantments, for when he came to himself he did not know whether he had been there for a long time or a little. But soon he made out that he was in a stone house, and through a small hole in the wall saw that the place where the house stood was bare of grass and full of great grey rocks, and he remembered his dream, and thought that it was all very unlike what had really happened. But in that he was not altogether right, for while he was in no cage and no twining vine with glorious flower was there, yet there was something else. For after a little while a door opened, and he saw standing in a light that nearly blinded him with its brightness a maiden full of winning grace, and light and slender, who stretched out her hand to him, and led him out of the dark into a great hall of stone with a vast fireplace. Then, having heard his story, which brought tears to her blue eyes, she opened a lattice and showed him a little room where he might hide. "For," said she, "I also was brought to this place long ago, and when I came the old witch killed one who was her slave before me. But before she died she told me the story of the green stone which the witch has, and also how were used the magic powders. Since then I have been here alone and have been her slave. But now she will kill me and will keep you for her servant until she tires of you, when she will catch another. And so it has been for many, many years, and each one that dies has told the power of the green stone to the other, though none had dared to use it." Now, hearing all that, Stout Heart was all for running away at once and taking the maiden from that dreadful place. But just as he opened his mouth to speak, there came to their ears the voice of the old witch. "Hide then," said the maiden, "and all may yet go well, for I must go to get the green stone by means of which we may fly. With you I will dare." Alone I was afraid to venture. Even then he hesitated and did not wish to hide, but she thrust him into a little room and closed the door. Through the wall he heard the witch enter and throw a pile of wood on the hearth. "I have a new prize," said the ogress. "You I have fattened long enough, and now you must be my meal. One slave at a time is enough for me, and the lad will do. Go then, fetch pepper and salt, red pepper and black, and see to it that you lose no time, for I am hungry and cannot wait." The girl went into another room, and the witch fell on her knees and began to build a roaring fire. Soon the maiden re-entered, but running lightly, and as she passed the old woman she cast on her some of the magic powder which she had brought instead of salt and pepper. The hag had no idea that it was the powder that the girl had thrown, and thinking that she had been careless with the salt and pepper began to scold her, then getting to her feet took her by the hair, opened the door of the little room in which Stout Heart was, and little knowing that the lad was there cast her in, screaming, "Stay there, useless one, until I am ready to roast you." The maiden thrust the green stone into the hands of Stout Heart, and at once they flew through the window and out under the arch of the sky. As for the old witch, the powder did its work, and she began to swell so that she could not pass out of any of the doors. But presently the boy and girl, from a height at which they could see below them the narrow valley and the witch house, saw that the old hag was struggling to get out by way of the roof. The two lost no time then. They flew swift and high, but swift too was the witch. Her growing had finished, and out over the top of the house she burst, and seeing the escaping pair, began to run in the direction they had taken. So there was much speeding both in the air and on the earth, and unlucky it was for the two that the green stone allowed those who carried it to fly only in the daytime. All this the maiden told Stout-Heart as they flew. The old witch well remembered that at night there was no power in the flying stone, and was gleeful in her wicked old heart as she watched the sun and the lengthening shadows. So she kept on with giant strides and leapings, and going at such a rate that she was always very nigh under the two in the air. No deer, no guanaco could have bounded lighter over the ground than she did, and no ostrich could have moved swifter. When the sun began to drop in the western sky, and he and she were looking at one another with concern as they flew, the maiden bethought her of a plan, and scattering some of the magic powder on the earth, she rejoiced to see that the leaves on which the powder fell turned into rabbits. The sight of that the witch could not resist, and she stopped a moment to catch some of the little animals and swallow them, so a little time was won for the flyers. But the hungry old witch soon went on and regained the time she had lost, and was under them again, running as fast as ever. So more powder was scattered, this time on some thorn bushes, which changed to foxes. Again the old woman stopped to eat, and the two gained a little. But the sun was lower, and they found themselves dropping ever nearer to the earth, flying indeed but little higher than the tree-tops, and as they saw, the old witch in her leaps lacked but little of touching them. Ahead of them was the lake in which Stout-Heart had been caught, the waters red as blood with the light of the western sky, but the power of the stone was failing with the waning day, and of the powder they had but a small handful left. As for the witch, so near was she that they could hear her breathing, could almost imagine that they felt her terrible claws in their garments. On the bank of the lake the last handful of the magic powder was cast, and they saw the grass turn to ants, and the stones to great turtles as they passed over the water, but so low that their feet almost touched the surface of the lake. The power of the stone was growing weak. The old witch, seeing the turtles, stopped to swallow them, shells and heads, and that gave the youth and maiden time enough to reach the opposite shore, where the power of the stone was quite exhausted as the sun touched the rim of the earth. The gentle maiden clung to Stout-Heart in great fear then, as they saw the old witch plunge into the lake, for she could travel on water as fast as she could on land. Indeed, the fearful old woman cut through the water so swiftly that a great wave leaped up on either side of her, and it was clear that before the sun had gone she would have her claws in the two friends. But when she was in the middle of the lake, the weight of the turtles she had swallowed began to bear her down. In vain she struggled, making a great uproar and lashing her hands and feet so furiously that the water became hot and a great steam rose up. Her force was spent, and the turtles were like great stones within her, so she sank beneath the water, and was seen no more. Great was the joy of the people when Stout-Heart brought the maiden to his home, for she became his wife, and was loved by all there as the fairest woman among them. The wonderful mirror. This is the tale of Suso, who was the daughter of a very rich man, a very kind-hearted one, too. Never was beggar turned from his door, nor in the length and breadth of his land was there hunger or want. And he loved Suso no less than she loved him. She was very close to his heart, and all that could be done to make her happy, he did. As for her, there was no pleasure in her day if she was not assured of his happiness. When her sister had left home to be married, Suso and her father had gone about planning a great park which Suso was to have for her own, a park of terraced, flowered hills. And when it was finished, both birds and animals came to live there, and the air was full of song. So in that place Suso played with her companions, and their hearts were in tune with the beauty all about. It was a never-ending pleasure to seek out new places in the great park, cool nooks in which were little waterfalls whose silver music mingled with the whispering of the leaves, or shaded spots where were ponds of crystal water and fountains and seats and bright green carpets of moss. For a long time there was happiness, until indeed her father married again, for her mother had died when Suso was a small child. Then one day there was a cloud of grief in the maiden's heart, because on a silent moonlit night she had walked with her father, and he had told her that he was troubled with a wasting sickness, and feared that he had not long to live. Some enemy, he said, had cast a spell on him, so that day by day he grew weaker and weaker and weaker. Wise men and doctors had looked into the matter, had sat solemnly and thought, had guessed and wondered, but had agreed on one thing only, that something was wrong. What that something was they did not know, but they agreed that if the thing that was wrong could be discovered and removed, all would go well again. Because of what her father had told her, Suso was sad and often wandered to a quiet place where she could tell her troubles to the trees. The stepmother was not at all fair in her ways, and not only disliked Suso, but was very mean and treacherous, hiding her hatred from the father, and petting Suso when he was near, stroking her hair and saying pretty things. So well did the wicked woman play her part that nothing could have made the father believe other than that she loved Suso quite as much as he did. For instance, on that moonlit night when he had told his daughter of his trouble, seeing her tears, for she had wept bitterly, he had said, "But Suso, my dove, your mother will care for you tenderly when I am dead, for she loves you dearly." At that the girl stifled her sobs and dried her tears, lest the father she loved so well should be wounded by her grief, and seeing her calmed he had supposed that all was well and that his words had soothed her. But see how it really was with Suso and her stepmother. There was one day, not long after, when father and stepmother and daughter were standing by the fountain, watching the wavering shadows flying across the green, when the man suddenly felt a clutching pain at his heart, and was forced to sit down for very weakness. When he felt a little better and the first sharpness of the pain had gone, Suso walked with him to the house, and when he was comfortably seated and had a feather robe cast about him, he bade her return to her stepmother. That she did because she was bid, although her wish would have been to sit at his feet. Because of her unwillingness and her grief she went softly, and not singing and dancing, as was her fashion. And what was her terror when she saw and heard the wicked woman talking to a great horned owl that sat in the hollow of an old tree. So terrible that seemed that Suso could find nothing to say, but stood with clasped hands, her heart a-flutter. Seeing Suso, the woman motioned to the owl, and the bird said no more, but sat listening, its head on one side. Then the stepmother took Suso by the hand and drew her into a place where they could be seen by the father, but far enough away to be out of earshot. But the father, seeing the woman and the maiden standing thus together, was happy, thinking that his daughter had a friend. It made him happier still to see the woman take Suso's arm and pull it gently about her waist, but he did not hear what was said, for had he heard, it would have cut him to the heart. This is what the woman said, and her voice was like a poisoned dart as she whispered loud enough for the owl to hear. "Suso, stand thus with your arm about my waist, so that your father may see us together. Thus he will think that I love you." Then she hissed in the girl's ear, "But I hate you, hate you, hate you." And the owl lifted his head, blew a little, and repeated softly, "Hate you, hoo, hoo." From far off in the woods came the sound of an answering owl like an echo, "Hate you, hoo, hoo." And it seemed to Suso that all the world hated her for no cause, for the screeching parrots, too, repeated the cry. As for the sweet feathered things that she loved, they had all fled from that place. Soon the stepmother spoke again, and the owl dropped to a lower branch the better to hear. "Suso," said the woman, "your father cannot live much longer. The spell is upon him, and day by day he nears his death. Because of that I am glad, for when he dies all this land, the house and all its riches, must be mine." Hearing that vicious speech, Suso was well nigh faint with fear and horror, and would have sped to her father to warn him. But the woman caught her by the wrist, twisting it painfully, and pinched the soft place on her arm with her other hand, and stooping again so that it seemed to the watching father that she kissed Suso, she said, "But see to it that you say no word, for the moment that you say anything but good of me, that moment your father will fall dead." So what was Suso to do? Thus it was that Suso crept to quiet places and told her tale to the whispering leaves and to the evening breeze, and thus it was that in the midst of all that beauty of golden sunlight and silver-glinted waters and flower-twined forest, she could not but be sad. For there were tears in her heart, and everything that her father did for her was as nothing, and like a crumbling tower. But she had told the trees, and trees bend their tops though they are foot-fast, and leaves, too, whisper one to another, so that the tale went abroad, though of this Suso knew nothing. 2. Now while all this was going on, there lived in the hills far off a youth, and his name was Hwathia. Brown-haired he was, and bright-eyed too, with clear skin and strong arms, and all who knew him said that he was a good lad and honest. He was a herder of goats and llamas, and one day, as he was out in the vega with his flock, he chanced to see a falcon wheeling high in the air, carrying something in its beak that sent the rays of the sun flashing far, like silver light. Then the bird dipped with the thing it was carrying, looking like a glittering falling star, and Hwathia for a moment lost sight of the bird as it dropped behind a bush. But it soon rose and took to flight, this time without the shining thing. So Hwathia went to the place where the falcon had dropped, and there at the bottom of a little stream he saw a bright round piece of silver. The lad rescued it and looked at it with astonishment as it lay in his hand. A polished and smooth disk it was, that reflected his face as clearly as a mirror. So he kept it, wrapping it in a leaf, and took it that night to the place where the lad lived with another herdsman, a very wise and good man who knew many strange things, and he told the youth that it was the wonderful mirror of one called Parakaka, long since dead. He said that whoever looked in it saw his own face as others saw it, but the owner of the mirror saw something else, for, added he, with it you may see the hidden spirit of other people, seeing through the mask they wear. And if a man has the face of a man but the heart of a fox, then certainly while such a man beholds his own face, you shall see the other creature in him. Hearing that, the youth Hwathia was much amazed at the magic of the thing, and, holding it so that the face of his herder friend was shown in the mirror, saw, not the rough bearded face of the man alone, all knotted like a tree trunk, but a face that was full of kindness and gentleness, at which he was glad. So he placed the wonderful mirror in his bag and carried it about with him. The next day, while he was leaning against the trunk of a tree and playing on his flute, he seemed to hear a whispering, and putting his reed away, he listened intently. Still and small were the voices that he heard, as treehead bent to treehead, and leaf murmured to leaf. But soon he caught the rumor that ran, and learned the tale that in the country of the rich man there was a creature, timorous and frail, whose gentle heart was heavy with sorrow, and that an unknown evil brooded dark. No time lost he then, seeing that there was something of worth that he could possibly do, but gave the care of the goats and llamas to his friend, took his arrows and bow, his bag with a little food and the wonderful mirror, and after bidding his friend good-bye, set off for the land of the rich man. What was strange was that while all had been silent in the soft green woods that morning, except for the sound of his flute, no sooner had he started on his way than a gay chorus came from the bright birds, and the world was full of mirth. So well content, he went on his way, a ragged herdsman, but light of heart and strong of limb and brave. Into the land of the rich man he went, and came in time to a place where sat the maiden under a tree, doves at her feet and glittering hummingbirds about her head. When Suso saw the youth, her heart leaped for joy, for she knew him for a kind lad, though never before had she set eyes on him. "Are you a beggar and poor?" she asked, "for here there is plenty for all." I am no beggar, he answered, and for myself I am well content with what I have. But it has been whispered about the world, and I have heard the tale, that there is a great sorrow upon you, and that some unknown evil is destroying the beauty and the bliss of this place. So I have come to do what is to be done." At that Suso said no more, but rose up and took Huathia by the hand and led him to her father. It was a day on which the good man was very weak, but seeing that his daughter was pleased with her new companion, he ordered his servants to spread a table under the trees, and the three of them had a feast of goat's milk and fruit and cassava bread, though the father could eat but little. Then Huathia took his flute and played sweet music until the world seemed full of peace, and gripping grief had vanished. Suso, too, sang sweetly, so that for a moment the father thought that the shadow that was upon him was but a dream and might pass. They talked long and long, the three of them, and Huathia learned much about the rich man's failing strength, whereupon it came to him somehow that by means of his wonderful mirror he might perchance discover what evil thing was about that place. To him the rich man said, "If with this mirror you can find the hidden evil thing and can restore my strength again, then there is nothing too great that I own which may not be yours for the asking." "There is but one thing I want," said Huathia, "for I love Suso the gentle and would marry her." The rich man thought long after this speech, stroking the hair of Suso, who sat at his knee, for it had not entered into his mind that his daughter might be the gift which the youth demanded as his price. But looking at the maiden, he saw that her eyes were cast down, though for a moment they had looked up swiftly as Huathia spoke. Then, too, it was certain that since the youth had been there, the song of the birds was louder in the thicket, and the green of the trees brighter. So the father said thoughtfully, "If you find the cause of the trouble that is upon me, and relieve it so that I am healed again, then you may have my daughter for your wife, though you must promise me that you will stay in this place." That Huathia promised readily enough, and stooped to Suso and kissed her, and having done so, went away to the dark pool in the woods to sleep. At the very moment the stepmother came out of the house to join her husband and his daughter. 3. As it happened that night, there was a thin new moon, and the youth slept but little because of the croaking noise made by the frogs. Presently, full awake, he sat up, and it seemed to him that the air was full of noise, not only of frogs, but of the hooting of owls and the whirring of bats. And looking, he saw the strange sight of a great white toad with 2 heads, and presently about that fearful thing other things gathered. From rock and hoe came unclean creatures, abominable serpents and centipedes and great gray spiders, and all these gathered in a circle, the 2-headed toad in the center. With wide open eyes Huathia watched, although the sight of so much that was noisome came near to benumbing and stupefying him, and incomplete shapes seemed to be looking at him with evil eyes from the black depth of the forest. Soon the owl began to mourn, and the song fell into words, and the youth heard this. "Who knows where hides our queen? Hoo! Hoo!" And first one creature and then another answered. "The toad, our queen, lies hid unsought beneath the stone that men have wrought." And so it went on, a mad and horrible concert, with bat and owl and great ghost moth whirling about on silent wings, until, sickened of it all, Huathia rose up and, clapping his hands to his ears, fled from the place. And when he had gained a quiet and lonely spot, he sat down, but in his ears rang what he had heard. "The toad, our queen, lies hid unsought beneath the stone that men have wrought." So he wondered and wondered where could be the stone that men had wrought, and the story that men had told of a great temple on the mountains came to him, but that place seemed too far away. When it was full day, the youth went to the house, and in time the rich man came forth and greeted him. Then came the stepmother, who fixed her large dark eyes on Huathia, not looking at him straight, but sideways. Suso came shortly afterward, and the youth could not take his eyes from her. It seemed to him that she was the most beautiful of living things as she sat on her stool by the side of her father, her hair touched by the golden light so that it seemed to be as full of ripples as a sun-kissed brook. So there was pleasant talk while they ate, and, after, a drinking in of soft music as Huathia played on his flute. Suso sang when Huathia had finished, and though her song had a touch of sadness in it, it seemed to her pleased father that all on earth that was soft and shapely and fair was gathered there in that garden, until catching the eye of his wife he was reminded that his life was flowing away, and the old grief came upon him. Somehow talk fell upon Huathia and his mirror and the strange way in which he had found it, and he took it from his bag. As he looked in it, Suso came and stood behind him, so that he saw the reflection of her face and the true picture of herself, and there was a gentleness there, the gentleness of the dove and the purity of the flower. The rich man came too, looking over Huathia's shoulder and saw his own reflection. But what the youth saw was a face that denoted great bravery and kindness. Seeing all this, the stepmother stretched her hand across the table and took the mirror, gazing at the picture of her own dark beauty. Then Huathia stepped to her side and looked into the disk. He saw not the dark eyes and night-black hair that she saw, not the face of a proud woman, but the face of a toad, and when she held the polished silver further off, the better to see, the toad face changed, so that he saw a double-headed toad. But of that she knew nothing, and did not even guess that he knew her for a vile witch and no true woman. And as she continued to gaze and her thoughts wandered, so did new things come into the picture that Huathia saw, and he beheld about her neck 2 writhing white snakes, a sight so horrible that he could scarcely hold his countenance or prevent himself from calling out. Having seen to her content, the woman rose from her stool and left the room. The rich man, already tired, for his night's sleep did not revive him, stood up and beckoned to the youth to give him an arm. Suso supported him on the other side, and so they walked slowly to a seat beneath a great flowering bush near the house. Having found his seat and being wrapped in his feather mantle by Suso, he asked the youth to play the flute again. Huathia was ready and willing, but somehow the memory of the 2-headed toad and the 2 white snakes made him nervous, and when he put his flute to his lips no sweet sounds came, but instead rude noises like the hissing of snakes and the croaking of frogs and the screeching of parrots. Even Suso stopped her ears, and her father bade the youth cease his noise. "Are you of those who make my last days the wearier with your noises?" he asked sorrowfully. Then he added, "For many nights I have dreamed of toads with 2 heads and of snakes that hung over me, and now you come with your flute and the noises that such evil things make. I had expected better of you, Huathia, seeing that I have treated you as a son." Huathia earnestly assured him that he had no wish to do other than to make music, and he ended by saying, "There is, I am sure, some enchantment in this place, for though the sun is warm, I feel a chill as if some clammy thing enfolded me." He shivered as he spoke, though he was a lad whose blood ran warm, not afraid, not given to idle fancies. Of a sudden, his eyes fell upon a large grindstone that lay nearby. It was a stone so great that 2 men could hardly make shift to raise it, and so it had been left there for years, and grasses had grown about it. But when Huathia saw it, there leaped into his mind the song that he had heard. "The toad, our queen, lies hid unsought beneath the stone that men have wrought." It had meant little in the night, but in a flash he saw that the grindstone was a stone wrought by men. So fitting an arrow to his bow, he handed the weapon to Suso, telling her to shoot whatever evil thing was discovered when he lifted the stone. With a great effort he raised the stone suddenly, heavy though it was, lifting it high above his head, and there, in a hollow place where the stone had been, sat a large, white, double-headed toad. "Shoot, Suso, shoot!" commanded the father. "Let not that evil thing escape. It is the creature that torments me at night." Swift flew the arrow, and it pierced the body of the toad. At the same moment there fell from the roof of the house 2 monstrous white serpents where they had lain hidden, like lightning. Horthia, having seized the bow, sent 2 arrows flying, and each serpent was cut into halves. In less than 3 moments, 3 evil things died, and it was like the sun coming from a cloud veil, the way in which joy came to that place. The weakness of the father fell from him like a cloak. The bodies of the toad and the snakes withered and shriveled, and as a light breeze sprang up, what was left of them was blown away as dust. There were soft stirrings in the thicket, and the whole world burst into song. So both father and daughter knew then that the witcheries were gone, and the evil creatures vanished forever, and that all the trouble that had been upon that place came from the wicked stepmother. So youth and maiden were married, and the father soon regained his health and strength, and in all the world there were no happier people than they. The tale of the lazy people. In Colombia, it seems, there were always monkeys, or if not always, at least as far as the memory of man goes. An old historian named Oviedo noted that and wrote, "When the Christians make an expedition to the interior and have to pass by woods, they ought to cover themselves well with their bucklers, for the monkeys throw down nuts and branches at them." I knew one, a servant. This man threw a stone at a monkey, who caught it and returned it with such force that it knocked out 4 or 5 of Francisco's teeth, and I know this to be true, for I often saw the said Francisco, always without his teeth. Now one day a man told me the tale of the monkeys, and he talked and talked as he smoked, until the stars came out and shone clear and steady, and the air was heavy with perfume, and owls and bats floated strangely as they will do, and when he had finished he still talked, taking up forgotten ends of his tale and winding in and about, making a long affair of a short matter. But then he had nothing else to do but to talk, and was mighty pleased, it seemed, to have someone to listen to him. Then, when we should have been sleeping, he went on talking, picking out a piece of the tale here and another piece there, and explaining until I was well nigh like to get the story tangled myself. But here is the meat of it. Long, long ago there were no monkeys, and the trees were so full of fruit and the vines of grapes that the people became lazy and at last did little but eat and sleep, being too idle to carry away the rinds and skins of the fruit that they lived on, and certainly too lazy to clean their thatched houses. It was very pleasant at first, but soon not so pleasant, for winged things that bit and stung came in thousands to feed on the things thrown aside, and they too grew lazy, finding so much to eat ready at hand, and when people tried to brush them away there was a loud and angry buzz and much irritated stinging, so that soon everyone was wonderstruck, not knowing exactly what to do. For a time it seemed easier to move the little village to a new spot, and to build new houses, for the dwellings were light affairs, and in a day or less a good house could be built. But then they lived by a lake from which the water for drinking was taken, and as it was but a little body of water, it was not long before the people had built right round the still pool, and so were back again at the starting place. As for the stinging flies, they were soon worse than the mosquitoes, while a great wasp with pink head and legs and bands of black and gold on its body, though very pretty to see, was worst of all. So it was no easy matter to know what to do, and there was much talk and much argument, and all that the people agreed on was that something had to be done, and that very soon. One day there came to the village a queer and rather faded kind of man, ragged and tattered and torn as though he had scrambled for miles through the thornbush forest. He had rough yellow hair and queer wrinkles at the corners of his eyes which made him look as if he were smiling. It was late in the afternoon when he came, and the people were taking their rest after the noon meal, so no one took much notice of him, although he went here and there looking at things, and so walked round the lake. But the curiosity of everyone was excited when he was seen to make a basket, which he did quickly, and then commenced to gather up the fruit skins and rinds in one place. Now and then someone or other raised himself in his hammock with a mind to talk to him, but it seemed almost too much trouble, and when some great blue-winged butterfly fluttered past or some golden-throated hummingbird flashed in the sunlight, their eyes wandered away from the old man and they forgot him again. So the sunlight died, and the forest was a velvet blackness, and everyone slept, though the old man still worked on, and the next morning when the people awoke he was still working diligently, though he had but a small place cleared after all. The very thought that anyone would work all night made the head man shiver with a kind of excitement, yet he was very curious to know why the stranger went to so much trouble, seeing that he neither lived there nor was of the lake men. At the same time it made his spirit droop to think that if the place was to be cleared up, he and everyone else had a mountain of work in sight. So Tara, the head man, called to Kuko, who was his servant, telling him to bring the stranger to him, and Kuko, who was very respectful, said that he would attend to it. Then Kuko did his part by calling Yana and delivering the message to him, and Yana in turn told his servant Mata, who told his servant Para, who told his servant Rakas, who told a boy, so that at last the message reached the old man. Then back went the old man, handed by the boy to Rakas, by Rakas to Para, by Para to Mata, by Mata to Yana, and by Yana to Kuko, so that at last he stood before Tara, the head man, and the others, being curious to know what was afoot, gathered about. "What is your name? From where do you come, and what do you want?" asked Tara, putting his 3 questions at once to save trouble. Then the head man looked at those about him with a little frown, as much as to say, "Note how wisely I act," and each man who had heard, seeing that the head man looked his way, nodded at his neighbor, as though calling attention to the wisdom of the head man, so all went very well. But the little old man stood there very simply, making no fuss at all, and quite unimpressed with the greatness of the great man. "I want to work," he answered. "I want to be told what you want done, and to see that it is done." To be sure, the language that he spoke was one new to those who listened, but somehow they seemed to understand. But the thing that he said they found truly astonishing, and could hardly believe their ears. But the head man, though as astonished as anyone there, quickly regained his composure and asked this question, "What is your trade?" "I have no trade," said the old man. "But I get things done." "What kind of things?" "All kinds of things." "Do you mean big things, like house building and all that?" asked the head man. "Yes." "And little things, too, which are really big things when you come to consider," said the old man. But that seemed an odd, if not a silly thing to say, the head man thought. "Little things left undone soon become big things," explained the old man, and waved his hand in the direction of a heap of fruit skins and husks nearby. "Yes, yes." "But you must not preach to us, you know," said Tara a little testily. "Tell me the names of the trades you have." So the little old man began to tell, naming big things and very little things, things important and things not important at all, and having finished, asked very politely whether anyone there had anything to be done. As for pay, he said that he wanted none at all, and would take none, and he said that because some of those gathered about him began offering him things. "For instance," Para said, "if you work for me, I will let you have 1 fish out of every 10 that you catch, for I am a fisherman." And Rakas pushed him aside, saying, "But I will do better, for I am supposed to be fruit gatherer, and will give you 2 things for every 10 you gather." And so it went, each bidding higher than his neighbor, until it came to the turn of the man whose duty it was to gather the rinds and fruit skins. He said, "I will let you have, not 1 out of 10, nor 2 out of 10, nor 5 out of 10 that you gather, but 10 out of 10, if you will work for me." At that the old man said quite positively that he would take no pay at all. No more was said then, and the little old man turned away without as much as bowing to the head man, seeing which the head man waved his hand and said, "You may go, and so that you will lose no time, you need not bow to me." And all the rest gathered there said very hastily, nor need you bow to me either." The old man took small notice of anyone, but went away singing, for he had a gay, light-hearted disposition, and having reached the place he had cleared, he took flat pieces of wood and began cutting out figures like little men, and each figure had a kind of handle that looked like a long tail. Nor did he cease whittling until he had made at least 20 wooden figures for each man in the village. Being finished, he stood up to stretch his legs and straighten his back, and when the people asked him what the little figures were for, he shrugged his shoulders but spoke never a word. Then he lifted the figures that he had made one by one and set them upright in the sand until there was a long row of them, and took his place in front of them like a general before his army. It was beautiful to look at, for one figure was as like another as one pin is like another, and for a moment even the old man stood admiring the line. After a moment he waved his hand in a peculiar way, spoke some magic word, and waved his hand again, at which each of the figures came to life and nodded its head, seeing which all the people laughed and clapped their hands. The ragged man bade them make no noise but watch. "Since you do not like to work," he said, "I have made 20 figures for each of you, and they will work for you without pay, doing what you require them to do. Only observe this, you must not give any figure more than one particular job. And now let each man or woman clap his hands 3 times, then call out the name of the thing to be done." When he had said this, the figures started running, 20 gathering in a circle about each man there, bowing from their hips and straightening themselves again so that their tails of wood went up and down like pump handles. "Now see," said the ragged man, "you have things to work for you, and as I call out, the figures will stand forth, each ready to do his task." And he began calling, thus, "Armadillo hunters, stand forth!" And 100 and more active figures ran together like soldiers. So he named others in order as bread makers, cassava gatherers, despolvadores, who would gather up dust, esquiladores, who would shear the goats, farsante men, whose work was to amuse tired men, guardas, to keep order about the place, horneros, or bakers, industriosos, who were to do odd jobs everywhere, jumentos, whose work it was to carry burdens, labradores, to do heavy work and clear away garbage, moladores, to grind the corn, narradors, who told stories, related gossip, and so on, oleros, or pot-makers, posilga figures, to attend to the pigs, queseros, to make cheese from goat's milk, rumbosos, or proud-looking things to walk in parades, servidores, or food carriers, trotadores, to run errands, vaqueros, to attend to the cows. So everyone was well pleased, and each one had his 20 figures to do all that needed to be done, and all that day there was a great scraping and cleaning and carrying and currying and hurrying and scurrying. Silently the little figures worked, never stopping, never tiring, never getting in one another's way, and all that the living people had to do was to rest and watch the men of wood and keep their brains free for higher things. For it must be remembered that before the old man came there with his wonderful gift, the people had complained that there was so much to be done that they had no time to write poems or to make songs or to create music, and that with the daily tasks abolished their brains would be more active. Not 2 days had passed before the children of the place complained that they did not have a chance, and that they had so much to do, what with hunting for things lost, looking after their small brothers and sisters, keeping things in order, trying to remember things they were told, cleaning things, and a dozen other tasks, that they really had no time to play, much less to study. So they went in a body to the old man and asked him to give each child 20 figures to do odd things. There was a great deal of fire and expression in his eyes when he made answer that if the children really needed help, he would lose no time in providing it. But the young people were quite positive that they were overworked, and the long and short of it was that the old man whittled out many, many more figures, and in another 24 hours each and every boy and girl had his own, a banicero or fan maker, so that none had to pluck a palm leaf. Balicero figure to carry letters and messages, Cabrero to look after the goats, Desalumbrado to hunt for things in the dark, Enseñador or private teacher, who was never to scold, Florista to save them the trouble of gathering flowers, Guasón figure to amuse them, Hojaldarista, whose work it was to make cakes, Juego figure to arrange games, keeper of things, lector to read and tell stories, mimo to act as clown, niñera to look after younger children, obediencia figure to make others obey, poster to buy things for them, guitar figures to take things away when children tired, recordación figures or rememberers, solfadors to sing to them, tortada men to make pies, volantes as servants. So things seemed to be going very well, and before a month had passed in all that place there was not a thing out of order, soiled, broken, bent, lost, misplaced, undone, unclean, or disorderly. Neither man nor woman nor child had to worry. Dinners were always prepared, fruits gathered, beds made, houses in perfect order, and all was spick and span. All that the grown-up people had to do was to look on, and no one was proud of the order in his house because every other house in the place was as orderly. As for the children, they had nothing at all to do but to eat, drink, rest, and sleep. Then, presently, more figures were called for, as this one or that wanted a larger house, a finer garden, or grander clothes. But as the wooden figures became more numerous, and as no figure could do more than one task, the ragged man had to make figures for the figures and servants for the servants, for as things went on, there had to be more fruit gatherers, more water carriers, more scavengers, more cooks, because the figures had to eat and drink. Thus it came to pass that before long, instead of there being 20 figures for each man, there were 60 or 70, with new ones coming from the old man's knife every day. Soon the lively mannequins were everywhere, inside houses as well as outside, thick as flies in summer and certainly a great deal more persistent, for there could be no closing of doors against the mannequins. Indeed, had anything like that been attempted, there would have been a great cry for special door openers. So many houses were quite cluttered with wooden men, those who were on duty rushing about until it made the head swim to look at them, and those who were resting or sleeping, for soon they learned to rest and to sleep, lying about the floors, piled up in corners, or hanging to rafters by their tails. All that increase in help had made for the production of 1,000 or more guardas, whose task it was to keep order, and they were everywhere, alert and watchful and officious, and the real people had to step about very gingerly sometimes, to avoid treading on them and annoying them. At last there came a day when the people began to grow a little tired of doing nothing, and they told one another that a little help was a very good thing, but help in excess, too much of a good thing altogether. So there was a meeting and much talk, and the mannequin narrators, whose duty it was to carry gossip and the news, were very busy, rushing from here to there with their scraps of information. "It is very clear that something must be done," said Terra, the head man. "But everything is being done," answered the little old man. "If everything is done, something must be done." "I did not mean that," said Terra, who seemed a little testy. "I meant to say that these wooden men must be kept in their places." "But they are in their places," replied the old man. "Their place is everywhere because they do everything, so they are in their places. You see, the days are so very long, so very dull," said the man who wished to have time that he might become a poet. "At the shut of day we are not weary. We do not want to be petted," said another. "The trouble is," sighed a fat man, "you can't be happy when everything is done for you." "And we don't want to be nobodies," shouted another. Another said very mournfully, "It seems to me that when these wooden things do things with our things, then the things that they do and make and care for are not our things." "Too many things in that speech," said the fat man. "Speech," said the fat man. "Well, there are too many things," answered the other. "Look at me. I used to be gardener, and now I'm nothing. When my garden is dug and planted and tended and watered, and the very flowers plucked by these wooden things, and when other wooden things pick up the leaves and pull the weeds and do everything, then my garden does not seem to be mine." He added after a while, "I hope you know what I mean, because it is not very clear to me, yet it is so. I remember." At that the little old man put up his hand and said, "But that is against the contract. You must not try to remember. Really, you must not, because there are mannequins to do all the remembering, if you please." "Well, but I think, oh," began the man, when he was again interrupted. "Please do not think," said the little old man. "We have things to do the thinking, if you please." He thought for a moment, his bent forefinger on his lips. Then he said, "I'll see what can be done." "It is clear that you are not satisfied, although you have everything that you ask for and certainly all the time that you want." "Let us do something," murmured Tara. "I'm afraid there is nothing that you can do," said the little old man, "because, as you see, everything is done, and when everything is done it is quite clear that something cannot be left to be done. The only thing that is clear is that there is nothing to be done." At that the meeting broke up, and each went to his own hammock to think things over, and soon the general cry was, "We must have elbow room." And hearing that, the little old man went to work and whittled more figures of wood, a whole army of them, 10 for each living man, woman, and child, and in voices that creaked like wooden machinery they marched hither and thither, crying, "Elbow room! Elbow room!" Soon there was confusion. It was mannequin against mannequin for a time, the elbow-roomers thrusting and pushing the other working mannequins, some going about their work with frantic haste, others interfering with them, clutching at them and at the things they carried, a tangled knot of them sometimes staggering to go down with a crash. Soon in every house was a jangling tumult, mannequins and men running about in houses and dashing out into the open spaces outside, the noise of slamming doors and breaking pots, the clamor of animals. Above all could be heard everywhere cries of, "We want elbow room! We want elbow room!" Soon men were running away from the houses with those strange, swift mannequins hanging to them, sometimes beating them, while other mannequins threw things out of the doors and through windows, food and household things. And excited children fled too, while their mannequins ran at their sides, some chattering, some acting the clown as was their duty, some telling stories as they ran, while other strange little figures of wood ran bearing heavy burdens. It was all a dreadful mix-up, with no one knowing what to do, no one knowing where to go, and everywhere the mannequins who were guardas or order-keepers ran about, tripping people and mannequins alike in the effort to stop the rush. But when the day was near its end, there were no people in the houses, and the hammocks swung idly, for all the men and women and children, even the white-haired grandfathers and grandmothers, had fled to the further side of the lake, where they could have elbow room, leaving the houses and all that was in them to the mannequins. The next day the people plucked their fruit for themselves, and it seemed as though fruit was never sweeter. The water that they carried from the lake tasted better and cooler than water had for many a long day, and when night came they were happily tired and slept well, without any mannequin to swing their hammocks and sing to them. And in the morning they woke early to discover the pink and gold of the sunrise most wonderful to see, and there was music in the sound of the wind among the grasses. So as the day passed, they were both amazed and astonished at the wonderful and beautiful things that they had almost forgotten. The sight of butterflies fluttering from flower to flower, the shadows chasing across the hills, the richness of the green earth and the blueness of the sky, the gold of sunlight on the leaves, the rippling water and the bending trees. Indeed, the memory of the mannequin days was like a fearful nightmare. Very light-hearted then they grew, and the world was full of the music of their laughter and song, and briskly they worked, enjoying it all, building new houses and making things to put in them. Meanwhile in the village things had gone queerly. For one thing, the elbow-roomers kept up their crowding and pushing, so that the mannikins trying to work at their old tasks, and there were many who went on just as before, were sadly hindered. There were other figures of wood with nothing to do, since the people they served were gone, and these fell to quarreling among themselves and grew mischievous. For instance, the pot-makers and the pot-cleaners fell out, and the pot-cleaners started to break the pots so that the pot-makers would have more work to do. That meant that the clay-gatherers and the clay-diggers had to work harder. Then, because they worked harder, though to be sure all their work meant nothing and was little more than idle bustle, they grew hungrier and wanted more to eat. Because of all that, the fruit-gatherers had more to do, and the water-carriers had to work harder, and the cassava bread-makers had to bake as they had never baked before. That brought the fire-builders into it, and of course the wood-gatherers also, for they too had to work harder and to eat more, so still more work came on the food-bringers. And all the time the elbow-roomers rushed about, always in groups of 10, driving and commanding, rushing on workers and sweeping them aside. So everywhere were little figures hurrying one after the other, going to and fro, busy about nothing, quarreling about nothing, fighting about nothing. The trouble came when the elbow-roomers interfered with the dogs and the cats, the goats and the hens, pushing and hustling them. For the animals, disliking all the disorder and clatter, fell upon the mannikins, workers and idlers alike. Seeing that, the household utensils took a hand, and the very pots and kettles ran or rolled or fell, spilling hot water over the wooden things with pump-handle tails. The very embers from the fires leaped into the fray. All the while from the metetes in which the corn had been ground came a low growling, and the growling formed itself into words. Day by day you tortured us. Grind, grind, grind. Holy, holy, hooky, huki. Grind, grind, grind. Bring to us the torturers. Grind, grind, grind. Let them feel our power now. Grind, grind. Grind. So the metetes turned and turned, going round and round without hands, and presently an elbow-roomer that was struggling with a corn-grinder stumbled, and both fell between the grinding stones and in a moment were crushed to powder. In a flash-house utensils and animals learned the new trick, and in every house mannikins were pushed into the grinding stones. Then sparks began to fly, and roofs to catch on fire, and mannikins bolted here and there in confusion, sometimes jamming in doorways. There were so many, and all in such disorder. Then came dazzling, flickering lightning and a great rain, so that for very safety the mannikins fled to the forest and climbed the trees. And there they have lived ever since, for they grew hair and became monkeys. But the remembrance of all that passed stayed with them, and in their hearts to this very day is no love for man, and for that very reason when a Christian passes through a forest he must look well to himself, lest the mannikins in revenge try to hurt him by casting nuts and branches at his head. Rairu and the Star Maiden. Perhaps my friend Pedro of Brazil told me the story of Rairu and the Star Maiden for much the same reason that hungry men fall to talk of meals that they have eaten. When I say hungry men, I do not mean men with an appetite, but men who have long been on the verge of starvation, shipwrecked sailors, men lost in the desert, and such like. The truth is that what the heart hungers for, the tongue talks of. So my friend Pedro told me many tales of his own warm land, where spice-laden breezes blow gently soft, and at the time he told me his tales, we too were in the midst of the snows of Tierra del Fuego, when the winds shrieked like 1,000 demons and the frost giant had bound river and lake. We were gold digging on the upper Santa Maria, and there came without warning a fierce blizzard, the snow falling for the best part of 2 days and 2 nights, and in the morning we could not move from our tent, though we had pitched it in a quiet nook of the hills. We had little to eat, nothing to read, and no light but the fire glow, and the world seemed to narrow about us, the mountains to close in, and the leaden sky to drop. And all the while Pedro talked of his gentler land, telling me the glory of hills all purple and green, of sunlit waters and flower-crowned children. So soon we forgot the black south wind and the destroying cold. Pedro half forgot, I think, that hope which led him to the far south. It was a hope long cherished, that he might find gold enough to enable him to live in quiet in his own land, among the books that he loved. However, you may think this wearisome talk, judging it better that I tell the tale told by Pedro. But I have felt it best to set it down as I have, because Pedro never saw his own land again, so the writing of the story is in some measure done in affection for my friend. As soon as the snow ceased to fall, he went away on foot, our horses having wandered before the storm, and his intention was to win his way to a shack some 8 miles away where he might get some food, which we needed sorely enough. I, in the meantime, we agreed, would take my rifle and try to shoot a guanaco or some other thing. But another storm came on, and it was not until 5 days had passed in search that I found Pedro. And he was frozen. As I write, I see the scene again. The snow-swept hills, the gray sky, the white-laden bushes, and Pedro. I made what haste I could to bury him in the ice-bound earth and put up a rough cross to mark the place, and I had barely finished when a white storm swept up and hid both mound and cross. Here is the tale he told, one of many, and he said that he had heard it often and often when he was a child. The tale. Of all things, nothing pleased Rairu more than to watch the ways of the living things of the forest, to bend over a flower and drink in its beauty, to lie by the side of a leaf-hidden pool and follow some shaft of sunshine as it shot to the depth, or to stand breathless when a wild bird broke into song. His father, very bitter against what he deemed idleness, often said harsh things, telling Rairu that he would do well to attend to matters more enduring. Still Rairu was what he was. Before the sunlight came over the world, he would seek the forest deeps, and there, hidden in green thickets, would lose himself in the music of the birds. And as time passed and Rairu grew into young manhood, another joy came to him, and the glory of the star-sprinkled sky filled him with wonder. Night after night he would wait in a favorite place by a little cascade, a place bare of trees, eagerly impatient for the soft light of the first star in the violet sky. Watching thus, Rairu found a thought rise in his mind, a thought that the world would be well only when that order was among men which was in the skies. More, it seemed to him that of all living creatures that walked the earth, man was the most destructive, the most wasteful, and the most untrustful. Then one night, as he lay at the foot of a palm tree, his heart was full of gladness because of the song of a night bird, and it came to him somehow to believe that the stars sang to the bird as the bird sang to the stars. So he looked up to find, if possible, which star heard that bird, and he saw one that hung low, one far more beautiful than her fellows. Thereafter, when the sky grew soft and dark, his eyes sought the silver one, and he waited until the night birds sang. Like jewels, like living sparks of sound, the music went up, and like a maiden, the silver one listened. When the star dropped in the west and the songbird ceased, then Rairu was sad and alone, alone as one in a sea-girt land whom none may visit. One day, it was a day of cloud-flecked sky and humming life, Rairu met an old man, thin-haired and bearded, and the stranger hailed him, calling him by name. After some talk, much of which seemed riddlesome to the lad, the old man asked him, what of all things, had he his wish, would he choose? After thinking a while, Rairu said, If the silver one would come from her place in the sky and go with me so that I might admire her beauty both day and night, I would be the happiest man on earth." Hearing that, the old man bade Rairu go to sleep that night on a high hill which was not far away. "And," said he, "if it be that you desire the silver one for her beauty alone, and not that others may envy you in your possession, then it may be that your wish shall be granted." No more, he said, but walked away, singing to himself softly as he went. All that day Rairu spent in the forest, eager for the night and the stars, and in the noonday heat sat in the shade of the trees with eyes fast closed, trying to make a song in which he might tell the world of the silver one and her great beauty, for it vexed him that so few looked to her, but no words came to him to satisfy. Only this, which he thought but a poor thing, when men sorrow and rage, when the hearts of men grieve, when arrows of sharp words wound, when there is none to pity pain, in the order of heaven there is sweet delight. In the night hushed and still, when is neither weeping nor laughter, in the night time between two empty days, the silver one is riding in the sky, singing hand in hand with her sister stars, singing because the life of men is an empty dream. When darkness was about to spread, he went up the rocky path to the hilltop, as the old man had bidden him, and lay there looking at the opal fires in the western sky, watching the change to sea green and gold, from orange to pink, and waiting until the stars should come forth. Now and then he sang the lines of the song he had made, the last lines, in the night time between two empty days, the silver one riding in the sky, singing hand in hand with her sister stars, singing because the life of men is an empty dream. When at last the stars pricked the dark, great was his grief to find that the silver one was not among them. He searched well, thinking that she hid perhaps behind a leaf, but soon he knew that her sisters went their way alone. Long and long he looked, and at last, wearied and sad at heart, fell asleep, weeping that he had lost the thing to him most dear. As he slept, he dreamed that the earth was bathed in a great white light, a light that was both light and music, at which he became wonderfully happy. He dreamed that he was lifted up as on a cloud, lifted up high into the heavens, and could see far below him countless sweetly turning spheres of light, and across great dark spaces and gulfs of blackness were other and new stars, and from the edge of nothingness to the edge of nothingness all was a tune. Still, for all that, his heart was heavy, because in all that stardust there was no silver one. What was most strange was this: though his heart was heavy, yet a joy was in him, a sad joy, for that he felt himself as a tight-stretched golden string that quivered in tune with the music all about. So he awoke and saw standing by his side a maiden clothed in white, whose eyes looked into his heart with deep love. "Arise, Rairu," said she, "for I have come to cheer and to comfort. I am the silver one, and you may keep me with you." So saying, she became small, small but none the less beautiful, so small indeed that she might have stood in the palm of Rairu's hand. Then Rairu was the happiest of mortals. He cast about him for a casket in which to keep his treasure, but finding none worthy, bethought him of his gourd, a thing which he had carved and adorned with much excellent skill. Having cleaned it well, so well that not a grain of dust was in it, he set it on the ground on its side in a clean place, and the silver one stepped into it, resting lightly on a bed of light green moss. All that day Rairu went about, now and then taking the cover from the gourd to look within and gaze with delight at the eyes of the silver one looking up at him. Whenever he did that, from the gourd there came a sound of melting music, so entrancing a sound that Rairu felt himself to be a part of all things, a part of the very heavens and the stars and the sun and the moon. Even of the forest with its animals and birds, its trees and its pools, he was a part. Day and night strange things the Silver One told Rairu, and of those things that which he found most sad was her telling that when the day came on which he took his eyes from her and thought of other things on which she would not look, things which hid from her in dark places and under roofs, then there would be a dividing, and she would become to him but as an aching memory. At that Reru, after pondering a while, always laughed, telling her that no sword could sever the thread that bound them. There came a day when the Silver One told Rairu that it would be well if they visited the Sky World for a season, and to do that Rairu was quite willing. So, at her bidding, Rairu sat among the leaves of a palm tree, and the Silver One crept out of the gourd and took her place by his side. With a little stick she touched the tree, and at that it grew rapidly, grew until it carried them into a place all bare and treeless, without birds or flowers. The Silver One told Reru to wait a while, and she would return. She sped away, and Reru kept her in his sight, for her light did not dim. Soon, to his astonishment, he saw, close at hand, a beautiful city with shining towers and moving lights of many colors, and about it went a joyful procession of young men and maidens, dancing and singing and playing instruments. Many beckoned to him to follow them, which he did. Soon he came to a great hall, and as he entered a great burst of music sounded, whereupon all there fell to dancing, whirling wildly. Wilder and more wild grew the music. It became a welter of sound, a boiling flood of strange noise that set his brain on fire. From corners leaped evil and ugly things, bats, swine, evil-eyed carrion birds, blunt-tailed and mud-colored serpents, and great white toads, soft and clammy. In the wild dance they joined, and the din grew louder, so that it seemed to Reru that his ears must crack. But more fearful things there were, so that Rairu fled to the place where he had stood when the Silver One left him. She was there waiting for him, but her eyes, though still full of love, were filled with sad tears. Very gently she chided him for his disobedience, and Rairu hung his head in sorrow and shame, knowing that he must leave the Silver One for a season. It needed no words to tell that the thread was broken. Hand clasped hand then, the more passionately because they knew that there would be a parting. "Go then, Rairu," said she, "but mind well that a little toil, a little striving, and thou shalt find me again. In the darkness lean on me, the more because thou knowest thyself to be weak. Under the shadow of death, dear Rairu, a fainting love is revived." So Rairu returned to earth, but great was his desire to find again that which he had lost. And he told his fellow men of all that he had seen, saying that he must again find his star. Soon, with searching, he found his Silver One, and the clear light led him, clothing all that he said and did with beauty. The Cat and the Dream Man. This is a tale that I heard when I was gold digging in Tierra del Fuego, and if you want to get to the tale and skip the introduction, you may. To do that, stop here, and pass over everything until you come to the 3 stars, and begin at many years ago. But if you want information and all that kind of thing, read straight on and learn that the man who told me the tale was named Soto, Adolfo Soto. He called himself a Bolivian and said that it was a tale of Bolivia, but he had never been to that country. His parents were Bolivian, but he had been born and reared in inland Patagonia, on the east side of the Cordilleras and north of the great shallow gulf that runs inland from the Strait of Magellan. Anyway, he had heard the tale from others who knew all about the 3 great stones and how they looked. Certainly he had not read the story, for books meant nothing to him, and he would not as much as look at a picture. And it was quite clear to me that he believed every word of the tale. Indeed, I am almost sure that he was doubtful in his mind as to the wisdom of telling me all of it, thinking that I would not believe it. Perhaps that is why he told me the tale in 2 parts, as if in some manner I might thus get used to the shock of it. Mind you, on the other hand, I am certain that he did not believe all that I told him, though he was too polite to express unbelief. For instance, he could not quite see how carriages went without horses, nor how men sent messages over miles of wire, nor how the sound of a human voice could come from a little box without magic, for in the country that Adolfo came from there were no railways, no telegraphs, and no phonographs. So to the tale, or rather the first part of it, if you choose to hear it. The first part. Many years ago, said Soto, there came into the world a cat. It was in the days when all creatures were harmless, when the teeth and claws of the jaguar did not hurt, when the fang of the serpent was not poisonous, when the very bushes had no thorns. But this cat was of evil heart and unmerciful and a curse to the world, for she went about teaching creatures to scratch and to bite, to tear and to kill, to hide in shady places and leap out on unsuspecting things. Even a sheep she did not leave to its own ways, but commenced to teach that gentle thing to fight by butting with its head, though as it came to pass most luckily, the cat came to a place where its mischief was stopped, as you shall hear soon, so that Señor Sheep was left with his lesson half or less than half learned, so that the youngest child now need not fear a whole flock. But for the most part, the cat slept in the daytime, so did not make all the mischief that she might have made, although she dreamed mischief, let it be remembered. But this was the bad thing of it. Her dream came to life and walked the earth in the shape of a man with a fox face, and a very terrible monster was he, for being a dream man he could not be killed. That you may see for yourself. Sometimes he appeared among men, dressed in fine robes in a way of a rich man, clothes wonderfully fine as those that you may see about the men pictured on the playing cards. Sometimes it was otherwise, and he came as one all worn and travel-stained. Sometimes he came as a head without a body, making mouths or looking slantwise. Sometimes he ran at people, did this dream man, ran with hooked fingers and claw nails, and made it so that the one he chased could not run at all, or running moved but slowly. For such must be the nature of the dreams of cats, as everyone knows who has seen a cat with a mouse. But whichever way the dream man came, mischief of some kind walked with him, and for the most part he did his evil work by granting men their wishes. For you must know that no man knows the thing that is best for him and for his welfare, and many are apt to see some little things as desirable, the which in time work out for their own undoing. Thus once there was a man who was a woodcutter, and growing weary of hard work he sat him down under a tree and sighed, saying that though he worked hard, yet his work was never done, and there were many mouths to feed. Then who should appear before him but the fox-faced man, which of course was but the cat dream come to life, the cat meantime being asleep in the sun. "So this happened. Why do you complain?" asked the fox-faced one, who knew very well what was afoot. "All day I cut and chop and chop and cut, but at the end of the day little is the work that I have done, and my very children for whom I toil, and for whom my wife toils, do but grumble that I am not rich," answered the poor fellow, who was indeed a very worthy man. "Lucky for you, then, is it that you have seen me," said Fox-face, "for know that I have it in my power to grant you a wish. What then would you have?" Hearing that, the woodcutter was thoughtful, for, in the manner of those who see a dream man, everything seemed right and proper. Still, while he had in his life wished for many things from day to day, when the time came to make a wish he had none ready. Then his eye fell on his axe, and he said without thinking, "For one thing I wish that my axe was an axe, so that when I cut a stick or anything, I would have two as big as the." To be sure, had he given thought, he might have seen how foolish a wish was that, as both cat and fox-face knew. But he spoke as the wind blew. Then Fox-face said some words which the woodcutter did not understand, and added, "Try now your axe." So the man took a stick about the size of a man's arm and brought down his axe in the middle of it, and lo, there were two sticks, each the size of a man's arm, instead of two pieces, each the half of that. The man looked up, open-mouthed and surprised to say something, but Foxface had vanished, for the cat had wakened, and so her dream ceased. But greatly amazed was the man, for, as he soon saw, all his chopping was of no account, for a tree cut down became at once 2 trees, and one of those trees cut in halves became 2 trees again. As for cutting smaller wood, that, too, soon became impossible, seeing that each stick grew to 2 sticks, so that soon he had to cease work because of the wood all about him. Worse still, as he went to the place where he lived, there came across his path a poisonous serpent, and forgetting for a moment the power of his axe, he cut the snake in 2, and there, hissing before him, were 2 snakes. So he fled to his people and told them the tale, at which they wondered greatly. But to make sure that the axe would do no mischief, and in truth somewhat fearing it, they hung it in a tree, and each man told his son the story of it, so that all might come to know it as a thing best left alone. 2. Now in the course of time there came to that place a very wise man who had seen many wonders. It had come to his ears that the cat was a creature of darkness, teaching harmless things, evil tricks, but of the fox-faced man he knew nothing. The cat only he considered. So the wise man walked the mountains for many days, and one day when the sky was low and it was a day of rain, an unpleasant day for the cat, he came upon the evil-minded creature hurrying somewhere. "Why in so great a hurry?" asked the wise man. "Sit a while with me and talk." "No, no," said the cat. "I like not your water, and I seek a place where there is shelter, so that I may be dry and warm." Indeed, the cat looked very miserable indeed. "Well, how would you like to have a house of stone?" asked the wise man. "That I should like very much indeed," answered the cat, "but it must be a house large enough for me, and with no room for any other creature, for I am not fond of company. But a house in which I could sit and dream, and where no noises might disturb, would be very pleasant. Make me such a one, and I shall teach you something. Or how about a wish? Would you like to have claws like an owl, or would you like to drink blood like a vampire bat, or would you like to spit poison, or would you like to bristle like a porcupine?" "Thank you, no," said the wise man. "I want nothing, but by tomorrow there shall be a house ready for you." "Where is it to be built?" asked the cat. "First, it must be in a quiet place where men do not go." "It shall be that," answered the wise man, "but just now I do not know where the place may be." "I must seek a proper place." "Then how shall I find it?" asked the cat. "Attend," said the wise man. "I shall put a thread about the world, a thread that no man may break with his hands, and when you see that thread, follow it, and so come to the stone house." "Agreed," said the cat, "but let the house be just big enough for me. Let it be in a quiet place. Also let it be of such fashion that I can slip out backward or leap out forward, should an enemy come." So that being said, and no more to come, man and cat parted. But mark well what followed. On the next day the cat chanced to see the thread and followed it, walking down hill and up hill, down mountain and up mountain, until she arrived at a high place where stood the wise man. At his feet were 3 flat stones, 2 standing upright, the third across the top of the 2, so that it was like 2 sides of a little house, roofed and of a comfortable size for the cat. So after looking about carefully and suspiciously, the cat entered into it and coiled her tail about her, blinked her eyes once, twice, thrice, then slept. And as soon as she was well asleep, the wise man fastened a thread about her neck, the same thread which went about the world, and which no man could break with his hands, there being magic about it, and Senora Cat was bound for years, and would have been bound forever, had it not been for Nazca, about whom you shall hear. That ends the tale of the cat, though there is much more to come. And if you are in a hurry to get to the rest of the tale, you may skip from this to the 3 stars again without losing much. I said that it ended the tale of the cat, but it does not. It ends the whole of an evening, for there was much looping and winding in his telling, and he added much that had nothing to do with the tale. Indeed, you should be very grateful indeed to me for trimming all the uninteresting stuff away. And let me tell you this, it was not at all easy to get Adolfo to tell the rest of the tale, and the place in which we sat when we talked was not comfortable. It was no house with radiators and electric lights or bathtubs and bookshelves. Indeed, the only furniture that we had was a frying pan without a handle and an iron pot. As for our house, it looked more like a short, stout bottle than a dwelling. For the truth is that we were careless builders and had made our house out of sods of earth. But while we started to build a square house, we did not take care of the corners, and the house came roundish and the walls leaned inward as they went higher, so we left the top open by way of chimney, for our fire was built in the middle of the floor. Thus such was the shape of our house that we had to sleep curved and we had to stand curved, though we rarely stood because of the smoke, I assure you. Almost 3 weeks passed away before Adolfo told me the rest of the tale, and it was a cold night in June when he did. After supper he commenced, perhaps because it was the kind of stew that he liked best, for the most of the stew was fish. I said the most of the stew, because our stews were different from those you have. If on Monday we had a piece of guanaco meat, we put it in the iron pot to stew. There would be something left over, for we always made a little more than we required, and we never wasted food. So, supper being done, the iron pot with the remains of the stew was put aside. Perhaps next day we might have caught or shot a young goose or something like that. Anyway, whatever we caught went into the pot by way of stew. So that day there would be goose stew with a flavor of guanaco. Next day we might add charqui, which is dried horseflesh, to the stew, so while the chief thing would be charqui, there would be a decided flavor of goose and more than a trace of guanaco. But if we had fish on the 4th day, then of course it would be strongly fishy stew with a kind of side taste of charqui, a flavor of goose, and a mild trace of guanajo. On the whole, it was satisfactory, for toward the end of the week anyone might find something to his liking, though on Saturday we always cleaned out the pot, as we needed it for our week's washing. And so, as I say, when we came one evening to fish stew, Adolfo was in high good humor and told me the rest of the tale, and this is how his story ran. The second part of the tale. "Now," began Soto, "you must remember all that I have told you about the cat bound on the mountain top, the magic axe hanging in the tree, and the hundreds and hundreds of years that passed, with the cat growing larger and larger. As the cat grew, so did the house, for the wise man had promised that it should be just big enough for the cat, and he kept his word. But you must also remember that the cat could not move, but could certainly dream. So she dreamed of many lands, and the dream man was very active indeed, though he vanished whenever the cat woke. When you come to think of it, you will see that it was a most excellent thing that the cat was bound, for had she not been, she would have worked her mischief on the world, and a sheep might have been as terrible as a wild boar, or flies as annoying as mosquitoes, or horses as bold as wild bulls, or the very fish as poisonous as serpents. While the cat did not dream, of course the fox-faced man was nowhere, and then all went very well, and trees put out their blossoms and fruits, the grass was softly green, the rain was like silver, and gentle were the hearts of men as they went about their affairs. But there was a day on which the cat dreamed, and the fox-faced fellow was busy. To the place where lived the people who guarded the magic axe there came a stranger. His eyes were aslant and little, the hair of him was reddish, and he was in rags and tatters and altogether dirty in appearance. To be sure, no one would look twice at rags and tatters, for one coming through the forest must needs be torn by thorns and bushes and all that tangle, but dirt was quite another matter, especially when the dirt included blood-stains, because in that place was much water and many running streams, nor was the water chill to the skin. So, because of the uncleanness of the man, people looked at him with unfriendly eyes, and though they were neither insolent nor rude, they hoped that he would go farther and not stay there. Nor would it have been any great hardship for him to do so, seeing that it was a place of much fruit and of many berries, and roots pleasant to the taste and full of nourishment. As for the night, any man might well stretch himself under that star-sprinkled sky, nor, except for the beasts that the cat had made unfriendly, were there creatures to do harm. But the stranger had no notion of doing anything to please the people, nor indeed could he do anything, seeing that he was the creature of the cat's dream, walking the world. For a time then he stood under a tree bewailing his lot, and crying out that all the world was against him, and saying that none were kind to him. Strange things he did, too, as is the manner of dream people, making himself sometimes shoot far, far away, so that he looked small, then coming near again and getting big, or sometimes pointing his finger at someone, then throwing his arm round and round in great circles, the finger always pointing, the circles he made growing smaller and smaller, little by little, but his finger always pointing, until it came close to the watcher's eyes. The people thought this an annoying thing for a stranger to do, but so it was, and always he woefully wailed. So those there stood about him in a little circle, none going close, but all wondering much at the great outcry, the like of which none there had heard before. Then he began to sing, noisily, wildly. This was his song. Over the world I walk, alone, forever alone. Trouble and trial and care, alone I bear alone. Torture and pain I bear, alone, forever alone. Wandering day and night, alone, forever alone. Sad and wretched my plight, alone, forever alone. Then he gave a long, long cry like a wolf. A, lone, ooh, 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 ooh. Then he talked again, but it was a jabber of idle words, so presently those about him shook their heads at one another, looking at him as one who had lost his wits, never thinking, of course, that he was a cat's dream. While all this was going on, there came from the little lake where he had been fishing a lad named Nazca, bearing a basket of fish, a happy fellow who always made music and song as he walked, and seeing the people gathered about the stranger he drew near. No sooner did the stranger clap eyes on the fish than he leaped at the basket and began devouring the silvery things, eating them raw, heads, bodies, and tails, for thus ran the cat's dream, and cattishness must out. But the meal being done, the stranger redoubled his lamentations, all the time swinging his arm in circles, sometimes great, sometimes small, with his finger pointed at the boy. Ay. Lone, ooh, 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 he screamed, and the boy thought that such a fellow well deserved to be alone, but he was too polite to say so. I am hungry and travel-worn, the stranger went on. Is there no one here who will give me shelter? Is there no one in this place with a kind heart to pity me? Hearing that, the heart of Nazca was touched, for never had he, nor never had his grandmother with whom he lived, turned a hungry creature away empty. Indeed, so gentle in spirit was Nazca, that if the stem of a flower was broken by a heedless creature, he was full of grief. Yet the doings of the stranger astonished him and troubled him, for the man, without seeming to move his feet, thrust his face close to the boy's, then somehow took his face far off. That silly trick he did again and again, as dream creatures do, so that seeing him Nazca was well nigh made dizzy. Then the lad, blushing red as fire because of all the people thereabouts who did not offer what he offered, said, Come home then with me. Our house is small, but there is room enough. Believe me, it is not that these people are hard-hearted that they do not seem to welcome you, but more because you must have been too weary with walking to wash yourself. But behind the hill and under a tree near where we live is a still pool, and there doubtless you will clean yourself. Then Nazca led the way, and the stranger went with him, yet not walking, but leaping up and down as he went, and sometimes not touching the ground at all. Nazca was not comfortable with the stranger by his side, for he felt him to be more like a shadow than a man, and a shadow that hung over him and tormented him, a shadow that might pounce upon him. Having come to the place where his grandmother was, Nazca was sorely troubled to see the old woman fall to trembling when she heard the voice of the stranger, who was making an idle jabber of words again. Indeed, after a time she put her hands to her face and wept, though that was after the man, having eaten, had left the place to rest under a tree. Nazca comforted her as best he could, then asked her to tell him the cause of her grief. Be it remembered that she was very, very old, and her eyes were weak and dim with age. "Tell me," she said, taking Nazca's hand, "has this man eyes aslant like the eyes of a fox?" "Indeed, and he has," answered Nazca. Then his heart bade him say some good of the fellow, and he added, "Yet no man makes his own face, wherefore must some be pitied." "Tell me," said the grandmother eagerly, "has he sharp teeth like a cat?" "That he has," said Nazca, then wondering asked, "Have you seen this man, then, when your eyes were bright and strong?" "No, Nazca," she answered, "never have I set eyes on him, yet I greatly fear him, and long, long ago I heard stories about such a creature, and it was said that much evil he wrought, yet none could slay him." She was silent for a little, then again she asked this, "Did you see his ears, Nazca, and are they pointed like those of a fox?" "Yes," said Nazca. At that answer the old woman was sad again, and Nazca had to comfort her with sweet words, telling her that she should come to no hurt, since he was there, for he would die defending her. "That I know, Nazca," she said. "If the hurt came to me alone, glad would I be, for I have seen my golden days, and now there is little left for me but the brief sunset hour. But I fear for others. Of such a creature I have heard it said that he comes from nowhere and goes into nothing, but somehow looses evil upon men. Because of that I fear. So, Nazca, promise me that if this man asks anything of you, you will do nothing that promises hurt to any living thing." That Nazca promised gladly enough, then said, "Yet it may be that this man is not the evil creature you have heard of. It may well be some unfortunate whose wits are loose. True, his face is far from pleasant to see, but a rough face may go with a good heart, and a man's face may change." "Yes, with wickedness," said the old woman. "But in truth it has been said that a man's face and his character both go with him to the grave, if indeed there is any grave for such as this." 2. Now all that talk Nazca remembered well the next day when a strange thing happened. For the stranger went about among the people asking this one and that what he most desired. But there were none to make a wish for a time, because life there was pleasant and easy, and the possessions of men were few, so all that the stranger said went for nothing. Then, as it chanced, there came one of the people a little put out because he had lost sleep that morning. He was a man much given to rest and slumber, a slow and heavy man, and that morning he had been awakened by the singing of the birds. To make matters worse, going away from the place where he had lain, in too great a hurry, he chanced to scratch himself on some thorns. So, taking it all in all, his humor was not a pleasant one. Yet had it not been for the stranger, he might have forgotten his troubles. As it was, he heard the stranger's speech and the offer to grant any wish, so he spoke without considering his words. "If you grant wishes, there is one that I would have," he said, nodding to his friends in the manner of one who had a matter of weight to tell of. "Say it," said the stranger, and he grinned queerly so that his lip went up and his tusky teeth shone yellow. "This morning I was disturbed by birds and scratched by thorns, so I wish that nothing might come near me to disturb me in the future." "As you wish," said the stranger, and gabbled what seemed to be idle and meaningless words. Then a strange thing happened, for as the man who had made the wish stood looking at the stranger, his mouth wide open, all living things about him suddenly fell away. Within the stretch of a man's arm from him the grass yellowed and died, and the flowers shrank and withered, and a butterfly that fluttered over him fell to earth, dead. And the people cried out, seeing that, but soon it became clear that not even sounds could come within that magic circle. The air bore no noise to the charmed man, not even the sweet noise of the songs of birds, nor the chirping of insects, and the man was, in very truth, in such case that nothing could be nigh him to disturb him. Indeed, as he moved, all things died within the stretch of his arms, seeing which his friends fled from him, all fearful of his nearness. Afraid of his loneliness, the man walked to a tree, but no sooner did he touch it than the very leaves folded themselves and turned black, then dropped off and fluttered down, so that the arms of the good tree stood skeleton bare against the sky. At that all hope in the man was gone, and he turned and fled into the forest, a space opening before him as he ran, a track of death everywhere behind him. Nazca saw all that, and his grandmother's fears came to his mind. Indeed, he told many there of what the old woman had said, but some of them held that the stranger had but granted the wisher his wish, and if there was fault in the matter, the fault lay with the wisher, not with the granter of the wish. As for the grandmother, when she heard the tale, she was in great trouble and threw herself on the ground weeping, and though Nazca did what he could to comfort her, yet she wept and wept. "Nazca," she said presently, "surely we must do what we can to rid the place of this fearful creature. For it is as I thought, and he is a black-hearted thing, not of this world of men, and one who will assuredly bring hate and fear and trouble. Find, then, if there is any means by which he may be made to go away, even to the point of helping him, if need be. But see to it that you think not of yourself and your own gain, and see to it that anything that you do at his request will bring no harm to any living creature, even the smallest." All this Nazca promised, and in the early dawn of the next day went up to the hills to see the sun rise, as indeed did all brave and strong men and fair maidens in that place. Then he swam a little while, and ate some fruit, and thought a while, and after sought out the stranger. "Stranger," said he, "be it known to you that there are many here who fear your presence among us, and who would be glad to see you gone from here. Ho, ho!" "What bold words are these I hear?" roared Fox-face, full of wrath at Nazca's words. "I speak but the truth," said the lad boldly enough, though his heart beat against his ribs. "Tell me, then, what can be done so that you may be persuaded to leave us?" Fox-face thought a while. Then he said, "On a far mountain is a gentle creature bound with a magic thread which no man's hand can break. Yet magic fights magic, and the magic axe can sever the thread. Also, at the moment the thread is cut, so will the man who is prisoned in air be free, but not before. Now the bound creature is my companion, and no fierce thing at all. Come with me, Nazca, bringing the magic axe, and when you have seen the cat, then perchance shall the spell be broken." All of that seeming fair to Nazca, he went to the tree where hung the magic axe, though he had much ado to climb through the tangle all about the tree, for no man had been there for many a year. He took the axe and fastened it well in his sash, and returned to the side of the stranger. Then Fox-face took a mat made of feathers of the night owl and the hair of the skunk, and spread it on the ground, but it was so small that there was scarce place for Nazca and the man too. So the lad cut it with the magic axe, and there were 2 mats, which was more to Nazca's taste, for he had no liking to stand on the mat and hold on to Fox-face. No sooner had they taken their places on the mats than they rose in the air, and in a swift moment both of them were so high that the country lay spread at their feet, with trees like grass and with rivers that looked like silver threads. Nor could the swiftest condor move with the speed with which they flew through the air. So at last they came to a place where everywhere were bare rocks and hard stone with no blade of grass to be seen, and it was a place among mountain peaks with stony ridge rising above stony ridge, and on a mountain peak the two rested. "Now look away to the far hill," said the stranger, and while the place to which he pointed was very far off, yet because of the clearness of the air it seemed but a short distance away. Looking steadily, Nazca saw the three great rocks, for they were tremendously grown now, after so many hundreds of years. But to Nazca they seemed no higher than a man's knee, and sitting under them was the cat. "That is the companion I seek," said Foxface. "By magic she is bound, and by magic only can she be loosed, and I promise you that if you will but loose her, I shall be seen no more in your land." "Fair enough," said Nazca, "but I must be assured of a return to my own place, for it is far from home on these hills." "That is well enough," answered Foxface. "Have you not your flying mat? Though to be sure, as soon as you take your foot from it, it will vanish." Nazca thought for a little while, and the more he thought, the more it seemed to him to be a good thing and not an evil to loose the cat, so he asked the stranger to show him the bond that held her. At that Foxface pointed, and there, almost at his feet, Nazca beheld a slender thread like a hair that ran this way and that as far as the eye could see. So with a blow of the magic axe he cut the thread, and there was a noise like thunder, and the thread ends slid away like swift snakes. Nor did the stranger play Nazca false, for in a flash he found himself back again at the foot of the tree where the magic axe had hung, and so swiftly had the journey been made that a man who had stooped to fill his calabash at a pool when Nazca left was even then straightening himself to go away, his calabash being filled. As for the fox-faced stranger, no one ever saw him again, for the cat being awakened, her dream had ended. And at the moment when the thread was cut, the man who had been bound in air came back again, his enchantment finished, and the things that had died about him because of invisible forces sprang to life again. But what of the cat? For Nazca little thought that he had loosed a fearful thing on the world, a frightful form of giant mold of a size bigger than a bull. Nor did he know until one evening, as he sat by the fire, it being chill in that high place at times, he turned his head as the robe that hung at the door bulged into the house. He looked to see his grandmother, but instead a great cat filled the doorway, a cat with green eyes, each the size of an egg. Indeed, so great was the cat that it had to crouch low to enter. And when within, the room was filled with it, a sight that made the heart of Nazca stand still. A gloomy terror it was, and most fiendish was the look that it gave the lad. But Nazca, though terror-stricken, yet showed no sign of fear. Instead, he made room for the cat by the fire, as though he saw cats like that every day. So the cat sat by the fire and close to Nazca, sometimes looking at the blaze without winking, sometimes turning its great head to look for long and long at the boy. Once Nazca stood up, saying that he would go outside and bring in more wood for the fire, privately thinking to get out of the place in safety, but the great paw of the cat shot out with claws that looked like reaping hooks, whereupon Nazca sat down again, saying that, after all, the fire would live a while. But he thought, and the cat looked, and the place was as still and quiet as a midnight pool. Presently Nazca found heart to say something. "If you want to stay here and rest," he said to the cat, "I shall go away." "You must not go away," said the cat in a soft voice, stretching out one of her paws with the cruel claws showing a little. After that a long time passed, and the fire flamed only a little, and the shadow of the cat was big and black on the wall, and Nazca thought, and the cat looked and looked. Then the firelight danced, and the big black shadow seemed to leap and then grow small, and the cat's eyes were full of a cold fire as they rested on Nazca. Then suddenly Nazca broke into a laugh, though, to be sure, the laugh did not come from his heart. "Why do you laugh?" said the cat. "Because you are so big and I am so little, but for all that I can run 10 times faster than you." answered Nazca, and his words sounded bold enough. He added, "All living creatures would agree in that." "That is nonsense," said the cat, her jealousy at once aroused. "I am the fastest creature on earth. I can leap over mountains, and I take rivers at a step." "It does not matter what you can do," said Nazca, growing bolder I went from this place to a far mountain, cut the thread that bound you, and returned before the man with the calabash had straightened himself, and if you do not believe it, I will bring the man. Nazca said all this with some idea of getting an excuse to go from there, but the words struck deep, and the cat wondered. "Why did you loose me?" asked the cat. "Because I wanted to run a race with you," answered Nazca. "If we run a race, it must be for a wager," said the cat. "If you lose, I make a meal of you. Is it agreed?" "Fairly spoken," said Nazca, "though to be sure if you lose, I make no meal of you." "Let us run tomorrow then," said Nazca, "and I shall sleep well under the tree and be fresh in the morning." "Not so," said the cat. "If we run at midnight and under the cold white moon." "So be it," answered Nazca. "Where shall we run?" "Across the mountains and back again 7 times," said the cat, choosing the highlands because she knew that she could leap over hills and canyons, while Nazca would have to climb up and down, and choosing night because she could see better in the dark than Nazca. For the cat was very wise, but Nazca on his part thought of little more than getting away from the cat for a while. So he told the cat that he would bring a basket of fish for her supper, which he did, and while the cat ate he went outside and sought his grandmother. The wise old woman laughed when she heard the story. "To a cat her cattishness," she said, "but to a woman her wit. All falls out well enough. Haste, run and bring me the magic axe." "But no," said Nazca, "to use that would but make 2 terrible cats, and 1 is more than enough." "Heed me, Nazca, and bring the axe," she repeated. At that the boy ran swiftly and brought the axe. "Now stand, Nazca, and fear not," said the old woman, and lifted the axe. So the lad stood, closing his eyes when he saw her raise the axe to strike. Then with a swift blow she brought the weapon down on Nazca's head, cutting him in 2, and in a moment there stood before her 2 Nazcas, each as like the other, as one blade of grass is like another. Surely and well had the axe done its work. One Nazca was as shapely as the other, one as fair-skinned as the other. "Now," said the old woman, "happy was I with 1 Nazca, so doubly happy shall I be with 2. So stay you here, Nazca the first, and Nazca the sin's joy and gladness are doubled." At that she remembered that she had told neither lad anything in her delight, so she turned again to the first Nazca. "Wait here for the great cat," she said. "Go with her to the great canyon where the race must start, and when the cat makes to leap across, which she will do you climb down a little way, then hide yourself until the cat returns. Doubtless we shall be able to manage matters at the other end, but see to it that you chide the cat for her slowness when she returns after the first run, and we shall see what we shall see." Having said that, the old woman set off with Nazca II, walking bravely over the ridges and hills that rose one behind the other like the waves of the sea. And when they had come to a far place where the mountain dropped down like a great stone wall to a fearful depth, they sat them down to wait, Nazca II being in plain sight, the old woman hiding behind a rock. But as soon as the moon rose, the great cat walked to where Nazca the Horrible. A sight was she that for a moment Nazca went deadly pale. But he spoke boldly enough nevertheless, for the brave one is not he that does not fear, but rather he that fears and yet does the thing that he has set out to do. "One thing," said Nazca to the cat, "is it right that you should leap over the canyon, going from one side to the other like a bird, while I must climb down and then up again? Let us make things fairer in the race, and do you climb down and up the other side with me." But all this he said in a kind of spirit of mischief, knowing full well that the cat would give him no chance at all. "Ha! "What is to do now?" said the cat with a hiss and a sneer. "Does your heart fail you already? Are you terror-tormented at the start? A fine racer you, indeed. No, no, my fine lad, we race for a supper, and you must supply the meal." To that Nazca answered nothing, so there was a little silence, broken only by the hooting of the owl, who was, indeed, trying to tell the cat the truth of matters. But the cat was too full of her own notions and had no ear for others. She lay crouched on the ground, ready to make a spring, and Nazca wondered whether her jump would be at him or across the canyon. Suddenly, in a voice like thunder, the cat called, "Start!" and at the word, leaped across the valley and was off and away without as much as giving a glance at the lad. But he made a great deal of fuss on his part, climbing down the face of the canyon wall. The cat, on landing on the other side, looked back, then gave a cry of triumph, seeing the poor start that Nazca had made. Come on," she called. "The run will sharpen my appetite," and even as she said that, she was a distance off, then bounding away uphill and downhill, over the ridges, over the rocks, over the streams, taking 100 yards at a bound. So in a very short space of time she came to the place where Nazca the second stood, and was mightily astonished to see her opponent, as she thought, there before her. "Too easy, Señora Cat, too easy," said Nazca the second, speaking as the grandmother bade him. "I thought cats were swifter. Doubtless you play, though." Hearing that speech, the cat was full of anger, and in a voice that shook the mountains, she roared, "Back! Back! Again! I'll show you." Off ran Nazca the second then, but the cat passed him like lightning, her very whiskers streaming behind, and as soon as she was over, the Señora Cat knew nothing of that, though, and went bounding as before, tearing uphill and downhill, over the ridges, over the rocks, over the streams, taking 200 yards at a leap, and at last came to the place of beginning, to behold Nazca, who stood smiling and wiping his brow lightly, as if he had been running. "Much better, Señora Cat," he said. "You almost caught me that time. A little faster and you would have won. But still I have more speed in me to let loose. Come on." No sooner were the words out of his mouth than he started off, making as though to climb down the canyon wall, and the cat gave a screech that shook the very skies and made the pale moon quiver. So fast she went that the very trees and bushes that she passed were scorched, and as for the rocks over which she flew, they were melted by the heat of the air. Every leap that she took was 400 yards. Uphill and downhill she went, over the ridges, over the rocks, over the streams, and so at last she came once more to where the second Nazca stood. "A good run, that, Señora Cat," he said. "I think that we shall finish the race soon, and in a way that I may live and be happy, though for me you must go supperless. Certainly I must try, for to lose will profit me nothing." But the cat was at her wits' end, supposing that Nazca ran faster than she. She opened her mouth to shriek, but fast upon her came a great feebleness, and she faltered and reeled, and then fell down in a faint, seeing nothing at all. No time, then, did the second Nazca and the old woman lose. Putting themselves to the task, they rode the cat to the edge of the great rock wall that ran down straight. Then, after a pause to gain breath, they gave another push, and the body of the giant cat fell over the edge and was broken to pieces on the sharp rocks below. So that was the end of the cat, and the end of her dreams. The two Nazcas and the old woman went to their own place and told the people all that had happened, so there was great rejoicing and laughter and song and weaving of garlands, and everybody was happy. And ever since there has been kindness and good fellowship in that land. And for those who would see signs of the tale, there stand the 3 great rocks on the highlands, each so heavy that 200 men could not lift them, and wise men wonder much what manner of men put them there. But only those who are not wise and learned know the truth of the matter, as you may test for yourself by asking any very wise men who come to visit you.